Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, July 13th, 2016 to order. May we have a roll call, please, Mr. Alexandrovich?
Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mrs. Ghosh.
Yes.
Mr. Nielsen.
Here.
Mrs. Evans.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mrs. Larson.
Here.
And I am here.
Thank you. Has the meeting been properly posted, Dr. Katz?
Yes.
Thank you. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 on the agenda is the Friends of Franklin Public Schools Award presentation. And we have Mrs. Witkowski and Dr. Patz who will present the awards.
Welcome, everybody. This is one of the special moments for us as a school district in that we get to recognize some people who have done so much throughout our district for a variety of people or a variety of organizations. One of the things that we hope to continually do is build partnerships with people. They do all those little things which add up to big things, and we really appreciate their efforts. So tonight we have some people that we want to recognize. And first of all, I'd like to have Susie Rock come forward. And Susie's going to present the award to Wheaton Franciscan Hospital. And representing Wheaton tonight is Sheila Gansberg. And Sheila is the Vice President of Patient Care Services. Susie, I'll turn it over to you. Sheila, you want to come up?
Dr. Pat spoke a little bit to partnerships, and Wheaton Franciscan has been a great partner to us at Franklin High School, specifically affording students at the high school with some learning opportunities, some pretty authentic and genuine learning opportunities through volunteering, some authentic projects that the students have engaged in. So we really sincerely appreciate the work in partnership with Wheaton Franciscan.
Congratulations, Sheila. The next organization we'd like to acknowledge is Domino's Pizza, and Victoria Jensen is going to be presenting this award, and Doug Barretts on behalf of Domino's will come up. So Doug, will you join us? Sure.
Domino's has been doing job assessments and experiences with our students with disabilities since the year 2000. It's been our longest lasting job shadow and our first job shadow for life skills students and transition students. And that's why I nominated the owner, Doug, and Tammy, the manager, because they are helping us fulfill our Franklin mission and vision by teaching students specific and general employment strategies that help us to help the students reach their highest level of personal excellence through learning experiences that focus on student need in partnership with the community. So thank you so much, Doug.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much. Sure. Thanks. Thank you. Our next award is going to be presented on behalf of both Mary Pat Seward, our principal at Ben Franklin Elementary, and Amanda Nix, who I believe is having a little difficulty getting here on time with traffic and so on. So we're going to move forward, and this award is being presented to Kayla's crew, and I'd like to have Shelley Runty come forward at this time. I'll take the liberty of speaking on behalf of both Mary Pat and Amanda. Shelley is one of these people that if you've ever had the opportunity to meet with her and work with her, you would know what a special person she is. I think that translated. I remember when I first got here and Kayla was at Ben Franklin, and I was just telling Shelley, when you walked into that building and you ran into Kayla, it just sort of made your day. And as a tribute to Kayla, the legacy of Kayla's crew, the park that has been built is a phenomenal place for kids to go of all ability levels. It's recognized, I think, everywhere. I'll go to a lot of different venues and people say, where's that new park that we heard so much about? But I think it takes a lot of people behind an effort to make it turn out the way Kayla's Park did. It's a phenomenal facility, and Shelley was really one of these people that she just has a knack for making sure that people join in on a good cause. She's a very special person, and Shelley, we want to congratulate you for all your efforts on behalf of Kayla and your family, and on behalf of the school district. Thank you for all you've done.
Thank you.
Congratulations to all the award winners, and thank you for coming, and feel free to not have to stay through the meeting if you don't want to. It's going to be a long one. Thank you for coming. Item 5 is community comment. Oh, I'm sorry, item 4, approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Lewis, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5 is community comment. Per board policy, we allow up to 15 minutes of resident comment. Are there any community members who would like to make a comment? Please come up to the microphones and state your name and address for the record. You could sit.
My name is Linda Vetrano. I live at 7485 Carter Circle North, but also here to provide some comments or some questions. And I understand this isn't to interact, but just some concerns about what I perceive will be your choice for the referendum for the Forest Park Middle School. Again, just several concerns. I want to preface this before I say anything else that my husband and I, he's not my husband, he's my brother. So I didn't know he was going to join me up here, but that being said, my husband and I have been educators our entire career. I'm retired now, but I just want everyone here to understand that we support education in every way we can. We certainly voted for the referendum for the high school, so I'm not trying to be antagonistic in any way, shape, or form. But just have a few questions about, or concerns about Forest Park here. My biggest concern, and perhaps this is on me, but I don't feel that as a community member, I was really very well informed about the plan or the survey. For whatever reason, and perhaps it's partially our responsibility, maybe somebody threw something away, but we're pretty responsible in my house. I never received the survey. And had I received the survey and completed it, there would have been some comments that I probably could have shared there that wouldn't be necessary this evening. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. The only way I really found out the details about this is I did read in the Franklin Now about the 3 proposals, and that to me seemed to be lacking a little bit of information as well. For example, from what I gathered, the reason for this referendum, potential referendum, is the fact that you're bringing 6th graders up here. I understand that. I understand that this is an old school. I was the first 7th grade class here, by the way, and I'm 58. Okay. In addition to that, you know, the kids have to stand in line for lunch. I get that. It's a little bit crowded, but beyond that, there just really wasn't a whole lot of information. So first and foremost, I didn't get the survey, and I don't really know a whole heck of a lot about this. So I really think that based on the decision you make, you're going to have to sell this to the community. Because even though I watched the school board meeting on the 22nd to inform me a little bit more about what was going on, that being said, you know, I listened to your expert who presented the information about the results from the survey, and he said that 21% responded, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. And although I'm not an expert on referendums or anything else, a 21% response seems to me that even though he said that's a good sample, I'm not sure that's a good sample. So although I'm rambling on here, I really think that in the very near future, you have to be very clear and explain to the people of Franklin what you expect to get here. Because quite honestly, we're still paying taxes for Franklin High School, and I know that turned out really well. But to ask someone like me, and probably most of the folks in Franklin, to accept an additional $150 per year on their property taxes, you have to have a pretty good explanation. And I'm sure you will. But I just want to voice that as my concern. Because I like to do a cost-benefit analysis. If you're going to charge me an extra $150 on my property tax bill every year, I'd like to see the rationale and what we're getting for this. And then the last point I'd like to make, and this is probably why my brother is joining me here, our family home has been at 7979 West Forest Hill. We are your neighbors directly to the east. And there are other residential properties directly to the east, including as you go down the way there, you got Tuckaway Shores. We moved in here in 1968, understanding at that point that it was a farm. And understanding that when you have a farm, you know, there's probably some drain tile and all the fields are configured in such a way that you're gonna get drainage. And if you've driven by Forest Park and you've driven by our lots, you know that there is significant drainage on the properties as it stands right now, in the spring, in every heavy rainstorm and everything else. My question to you, or something I would ask you to consider, is in your plan, have you addressed the probable environmental impact that selecting option 3, which I think you might be leaning toward doing here, which will be moving that building to the center of that field, and with it adding asphalt and everything else, have you considered the environmental impact? How it's going to drain, what it's going to do? Because as it stands right now, when you've got turf in that area, we still get significant drainage. You replace that with asphalt and building, I'm a little bit concerned. And the second thing is, I would assume, perhaps incorrectly, that this has been presented to the Plan Commission, that if you, if you explore option 3, it's been, presented to the Planning Commission. And if so, have they considered what you will do to take care of the drainage? Is it going to be a retention pond? Is it going to be something like that? Clearly, there have been no complaints from the neighbors to your east about anything up until now. But this is a pretty serious concern. And I would certainly hope that you would consider that, if you haven't already done so, if you do select option 3 as I think that you would, as a referendum item. I don't know if Maddie has
Yeah,
any.
one of
Name and
my,
address.
it's Matthew Kolka, 7979 West Forest Hill. One of my main concerns with putting the building there will be, with the kids that close, what am I gonna see in my yard? I'll give you good examples. Steve, you know, because you and I have addressed this problem. We've had the soccer fields over here, and we were getting cars parked up and down Forest Hill Avenue, and it was very, very dangerous. Nobody was doing anything about it until I brought it to Steve's attention, and he did a brilliant plan and took and moved the fields up to the school, and now the people are parking up here. Great. I would get kids coming over and sitting on my retention wall by my garage. Not once have I ever called, ever complained. Why? They're kids. They're not doing any harm. Everything was good. Why take and create a problem? I think that by bringing number 3 in, it's going to open up a can of worms. We're going to see kids, now you're close to that woods. They're going to ditch school and they're going to hide in there. They're going to sneak into my yard. They're going to sneak into the neighbor's yards. We don't see that now. We've had one incident since the school has been in operation. One time they got into that woods and started a fire many years ago. We haven't had any problems with the building sitting where it is. The other issue that I have a concern with is the traffic problem. I don't know if you guys see it in the mornings, with you especially, when they take and they come up because the parents take and bring their kids to school. Now, if we bring this building this close, what is it going to do to Forest Hill Avenue? I have to fight to get out of my driveway every morning if I try and back out when school is on because the kids don't take the buses anymore. I mean, I have no children, and I'm looking going, boy, I'm paying taxes for all this bus usage, and it's not being used. And, when the dances are up here, we will have cars all the way at the end of the driveway. With that long driveway, it makes it convenient. Things work well. I mean, I'm not opposed to taking and improving the school. I went to the school. But if we have to go that route, I would like to see Plan 1 where we add on to the school. I think the location where it is serves everybody best. When you guys did your soccer fields over, as Linda stated, the water problem. I can watch the water literally come running across the back when you guys repitched it toward my yard. Ever once has ever been a problem? No. I've had my bridge float away twice when we get hard water. I would hate to see what would happen is if you take and you put a concrete building there and parking lots, what it's going to do to it. And to put a retention pond there, now you're just opening up another can of worms. What happens if a student goes in there and drowns? Now that's a lawsuit, which you guys probably hadn't thought about. Well, but anyway, I mean, these are all issues that I see that could be a potential problem. And I think that, working together all these years, you know, I get things where I'm looking at it and going, you know, I have this nice open view, everything looks nice, never have had any complaints with the school district at all. I mean, Steve has been very good about it. We've had a few discussions on things, and when there's, you know, an issue, I go direct to him, and there's been very few. Mainly, we had the parking issue, because I saw kids almost getting hit coming down the road, and that's when he addressed it and took care of the problem, which I think I commend him for what he did.
We want to be good neighbors, and we want to be supportive, but we want to, I believe that you've taken all these things in consideration, and if you have not, please do.
Thank you.
You done?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Becca, Matt, and Linda here. I'm the next door neighbor of Matthew. I'm Virginia Norman. I live at 7901 West Forest Hill, right next door, right to the east, right next door to Matt. I have a 3-acre plot of land there. I'm worried about everything they're worried about, but more so I'm worried about also, is the possibility of a sidewalk. I live there with my disabled husband, and I am not going to be shoveling a sidewalk on Forest Hill Avenue. So I hope you've taken that into consideration also. Also, we both have well water, Matt and I. How is this going to affect our well water? We're not on city water. We have city sewer, but we're on well water. We also have a small retention pond in front of our house, which is dry right now. It dries up every year about the 4th of July. I get everything from, from the west. Comes right onto my property, onto the small retention pond. It's actually not that small. It's probably, is it big as this room, Matt?
It's big, yeah.
It's about as big as this room. Not real deep, but about as big as this room. I'm gonna get the water. I'm already 4 feet below the surface of Forest Hill Avenue. My whole property is 4 feet below Forest Hill Avenue. So what's that gonna do to me? Matt is higher up than I am. So I don't want this new school put further to the north. I don't want to be looking at it from my property. I've never used the school system in Franklin myself, or have we ever had kids use it. We've been here 35 years this month, and I think our opinion should mean something to you. I was never even informed that this building was going to be built. Maybe I missed something too, but all of a sudden this building went up. Nobody asked me if I thought it was okay. I guess it doesn't matter what the neighbors think. Also, Mr. Superintendent, are you aware that more than once, I've sort of kept my mouth shut, but I guess you rent out the soccer fields in the front. They've been using my yard for a toilet more than once. Full-grown men, and I don't like it. I guess they just don't have any manners or whatever, but I've caught them red-handed more than once, so I know. So I guess those aren't really school activities, but the land is being rented out, and this is what we get. People peeing in my yard. Matt has, what do you have, 2-point-something acres, and we've got 3. A lot of it is woods. So I suppose it's tempting, but the people I caught were peeing in the front along Forest Hill Avenue. Because I'm the only one with woods in the front on Forest Hill Avenue. You can't see my house. At least this time of year you can't. So thank you for listening, but I'm not happy about any of this. But I guess progress is progress, and I can't say, you can't do it, but I really don't want to be looking at it from my backyard. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Dr. Paz, since this is on the agenda, we're not going to have a back and forth, but as far as mailing the surveys, we mail to every household.
Yep.
If something happens with the post office, we don't have control over a survey not being
Right.
sent to someone, but we did mail to every household. Okay, thank you. And thank you again for your comments. Is there any other community comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 6, the consent agenda. Would any board member like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I hear approval from the board? Is there approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention. Consent agenda is approved. Item 7, school board announcements. Are there any announcements? I would just like to announce that I did not bring the program with me that was sent to us for the regional meetings. I would assume all the board members received it. I think it's September 28th, but this year it is on a board meeting date, unfortunately. But they did send me a request for a new officer for our region. If any board member would be interested in being the Region 11 officer, please let me know, and I will get you an application for, oh,
I do have it with you, it's 28th.
it is September 28th, okay. But I have the application for the Region 11 representative, which does entail going to Madison for meetings, and I can get you more information if you're interested. But I would have to have that sent back to Region 11 by, I believe it was August 1st. Yeah, no, I'm not, that's not right. I think it's in 2 weeks. If you're interested, let me know and I'll get you the information. Item 8 is school board calendar. Regular board meeting, August 24th, 2016, here at the Education and Community Center at 5:30, which will be followed by the annual meeting of the electors on August 24th, 2016, here at the ECC at 6:00 p.m. Item 9 is the liaison reports. I am aware that Mr. Lewis has a board liaison report. Mr. Lewis?
Does anyone else have one that they'd like to go first?
Oh, okay. From the communications area, the calendars will be available actually at the Franklin Night Out, which is Monday, August 1st. Board members want to participate in that at 6 to 9. We do have a table reserved. Also, the website is being worked on, and I understand we'll get more information on the website soon. As far as in the area of finance, I did talk to Mr. Milzer, and the auditors are arriving next week. They're closing out the fiscal year, and we'll be also busy with other items that relate to a possible referendum also are coming up. Also, wanted to remind the board from the Educational Foundation that the golf outing is Monday, August 15th. And you did receive something at your tables regarding that. And they were also in the parade. I don't know if anybody saw them. They did have a float, so they got a little bit more awareness, and they had a table later. They're trying to attract alumni and build a database to help with that. And I think that is all I have.
Can we go back to National Night Out? You said we have a table. Is it going to be the same format as previous years with a coloring contest, or are you going to do something different?
I just began a few conversations back and forth with Megan. I'm thinking about a couple of different ideas, but we can, nothing's been finalized. If you have ideas, let me know.
The dunk tank?
That wasn't one of them.
And you know, is our table outside?
It is outside, yes, because they guaranteed perfect weather, no bugs.
Okay.
I went for that.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so you have a packet in front of you for HR and Policy Liaison Report. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll through a couple PowerPoint pages first and then discuss some of the content that is also attached. So you have roughly, I think, 10 pages attached here. So if you look at the first PowerPoint page where we talk about 2016 priorities and initiatives, in a discussion with Dr. Miller, basically what we did is we discussed high-level initiatives that have been discussed with the board in the past with the presentation that Dr. Miller provided us a couple months ago. But this is just kind of a reminder of some high-level initiatives that she has on her plate, especially with the school year starting somewhat soon. So I wanted to roll through the change to educational effectiveness systems and the training and education that would have to accompany that system change. Some discussions and research that her department has been going through in terms of looking at e-filing and electronic records retention, changing some of the old paper records that we have into their electronic form. Kind of revising or reviewing our compensation model. It's been in place now for 4 years. And what can we do to this model to always continually improve our compensation structure for our district staff. And then finally, looking at our staffing plan and preparing for back to school. So this includes induction materials, our planning sessions, new teacher orientation, those types of activities, as well as a recruitment fair. And I can't remember the date, but that'll be hosted at St. Francis High School, I believe, and hosted by CISA 1.
Right, end of July.
End of July. And then obviously, one of the most important areas that our board deals with is policy work. And what you'll see on the second page is some pretty important information on our 2016 plan for policy review. What we've done as an overview is we've looked at our list of policies, which is close to 150 policies we have for the district, which is quite voluminous. But instead of sending around a list to every one of the board members, we kind of took an approach to have a more standardized review, and that is to review, revise, or eliminate, depending on what the policy states and what we need per some of our suggestions, legal counsel and the like, as looking at any of those policies that are 10 years or older since either the last review or having no review at all. Secondly, what I'm going to propose is a bulk review of policies. So if we have policies up for elimination or policies that are suggested with no revision changes, that in lieu of looking at one policy a day or one policy per meeting for 3 or 4 meetings straight, that we do a bulk review of 5 to 10 policies if they're up for elimination or revision, or excuse me, reconfirmation with no changes. Thank you. And included in that review is something that I suggested to Dr. Miller was the WASB, which you have attached in your packet, has a list of from 2015, a list of policies that they either note are mandated by law, statute, or suggest from their legal counsel that we have on the books. The number of those policies total around 60, and in comparison to what we have on the books, close to 160 policies, what I would like to do is do a cross-reference of what's included in our policies and with the WASB's list. Where do we have redundancies? Where do we have policies that aren't included on their list? And what would we suggest to do with those policies? So that's a review that I'm going to take on as a responsibility for myself to provide to the board a kind of review of where we are either missing policies, have numerous policies that correlate to one of their policies, or have policies that aren't listed on their list of policies at all. So you can see under the WASB policy review summary where we talk about our policies, 146 versus their 60, what are mandated versus what policies do we have on the books that aren't at all, and then a bulk review, which I would say is probably going to be the most efficient way for us in some of our meetings that may have very little action items on our agendas to bulk review some of our policies at that time, because flatly and frankly, if we look at our list of policies at 160 policies, if we try to review what we want to review every year, that list is lengthy. And it's not necessarily Dr. Miller's full job description to review policies, and I know it's very time consuming for her to do so. So I'm trying to come up with a plan with how we can adequately attack that review process, knowing that we have policies that haven't been touched since 1993. And what we can do to get some input from our other administrators to take a look at some of our policy list and provide some input on what they believe we need or don't need. So in some of our considerations of what we're looking at for our plan in 2016, we obviously have new policies that are in place or being considered, which we'll go through, and that's basically based on our changing legal landscape and what our outside counsel suggests. Secondly, if we look at our needs assessment and popularity, we obviously have policies that we have on the books as policies that may be better suited in an employee handbook, since we have employees signing that handbook, and that's our code of conduct, so to speak. And then also understanding policy review topics that may draw unnecessary or needed attention, depending on how you view it. For example, if we review a policy on teacher contact minutes or teacher prep time, without prefacing that on an agenda, that might cause some concern for our district staff if that policy is only for reconfirmation with no edits versus a discussion that we may need to have, very similar to the discussion we had on parent-teacher conferences. And then finally, if we look at our large number of policies, it's my opinion, looking through some of the names of the policies and text by myself prior to the meeting tonight, some of the policies we have are redundant or can be included with other policies. If we have, for example, like we've done in the past, where we have two separate discrimination policies, it makes sense to combine them in one, and then we're eliminating one policy out of that review. So that's kind of a high-level overview of what Dr. Miller and I discussed. If you turn to some of the next documents in that packet, you have the 2015 WASB policy manual, where it goes through their 60 policies that they list as mandated policy or procedure that the district have on file. So you can just roll through that list. It's 4 pages long. Secondly, the second stapled packet is a list of every policy that the district has on our books. That first page of that stapled packet shows the 2016 plan. It shows at least Dr. Miller's high-level categorization of whether that policy may need revision, simply reconfirmation with no edits, or elimination. So then the last page of that packet, the single page, breaks up that same list into discussion and revision policies that would be up for potential elimination, and then policies that are up for reconfirmation. And then finally on that list is a contemplated new policy and guidelines related to students who are transgender or non-conforming to gender role stereotypes. So that's basically an overview of what our 2016-2017 policy review structure will be. Like I mentioned, I think Dr. Miller will be reaching out to the other administrative staff to receive some input on policies that they may have relating to their specific fields and receiving their input, which I think is necessary.
So who's going to do the cross-reference between our current policies and the?
I will.
You will, okay. I like it.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Okay, item 10A under board discussion and action items is approval of the 2016 annual meeting agenda. Are there any questions regarding the 2016 annual meeting agenda?
Are there any changes to it from last year? No. Didn't think so.
You're looking for an action item to approve
Right.
that agenda item, so I'll move to approve the 2016 annual meeting agenda.
Motion by Mr. Lewis, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Larson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Item 10B, the district academic standards approval. Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, this is our annual statutorily required approval of our district standards that will be in effect for the 16-17 school year. This was a change in statute under the last biennial budget last summer. We did that initial approval last August, and then it needs to occur in every July, the first July meeting moving forward. It's virtually the same memo as last year, and the standards are identical, so there have been no changes to the standards. So we're looking for a motion to approve those standards for this year.
Do I hear a motion to approve the academic standards for the 2016-17 school year?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Alexandrovich, is there any discussion?
Do both of you receive input from district staff on our academic standards?
Yeah, all of these standards were approved through the rigorous review processes that we've used over the last several years, so.
Teachers are part of that review process.
Any other discussion?
It was written somewhere that they have to come up with some of their materials on their own. How does that work?
No, the district provides all of the curriculum to the teachers. I think, well, the memo was indicating that we strive to move beyond the academic standards. So those define a level of proficiency, and we seek to move beyond that. So we have rubrics and course curriculum that's developed by our instructors.
So is it like how do you say, is it like the same throughout? Or do teachers have to just come up with their own materials?
Yeah, no, we have continuity between classes, teachers, and grade levels.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 11, reports and presentations. Superintendent's report, middle school facilities referendum discussion. Dr. Pats.
At our last meeting, we discussed the different options that we were taking a look at after the board had toured the middle school last spring. To take a look at what we should narrow that down to. At the last meeting, the board decided to narrow it down to two options, option 1 and option 3, but wanted a little bit more detail, more options. So tonight we have with us Nick Kent from Plunkett Racich, our architectural firm, to give you some sort of differences, some overviews, and some considerations that you should have for not only talking points, but in your decision-making process that might shed a little bit more light on what we have to look at in terms of either one of those two options. So with that, Nick, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. I think this will be rather brief, and I'd like to address any questions that you all might have. When you've narrowed down to option 1 versus option 3, I think the most important thing to think about is what does option 3 do that maybe option 1 doesn't from the outside of this project? And while option 1 is certainly the less expensive option from an upfront cost, the way we're looking at it in today's dollars, is it really the less expensive project long-term, looking out decades out into the future? The key difference, of course, is option 1 is a renovation and expansion project, and option 3 is a brand-new building. And we've talked about this in the past. When we build a brand-new building, we control the variables on that. We control all the variables. We don't have to deal with existing things like structures, like odd geometries, existing mechanical systems that are in those buildings, existing envelopes. Option 3 gives us the ability to deliver a building that has the flexibility within it to accommodate not just bringing 6th grade students up, but also provide the best possible organization of spaces, the flexible learning spaces, those other spaces that don't exist today in Forest Park Middle School. Option 1 gets us a good distance to that goal, but recall it does not renovate the entire building. And when you look at the graphics that you've seen before, there are gray areas on that plan. We have red areas for new, we have blue areas for renovated, and gray areas for spaces that are really not touched. And one of the key elements that we talked about, one of the key shortcomings of the current building structure is in fact the pod organization, the size and the shape of those classrooms. And option 1, while it does expand the building and infill a courtyard to provide some flexible learning spaces and provide additional capacity to bring the 6th grade up and provide additional athletic space, it does not go into those classrooms. It does not change the size of the classrooms. It does not change the configuration, the space, or the shape of those classrooms. Option 3 does not have that limitation, of course, on it because it is brand new. So one of the things I was asked to take a look at is if option 1 were built today, what would it take at some point in the future to bring it back to a full, flexible, modern learning space, similar to what we had looked at in option 2, the one that has been rejected. And we asked our partners at J.P. Cullen, the construction management company that we've been talking with, to project as best they can what an inflation factor might be looking out into the future. So it was a pretty simple analysis. We looked at what the cost difference between option 1 and option 2 was. Option 1 was kind of a partial renovation. Option 2 was the full renovation of that space. And the cost difference between those two was approximately $23 million between those two options. When they applied a 3% inflation factor, and in today's construction market, going out multiple years, you're essentially guessing, but it's historically a safe number. 5 years from now, that number would inflate by $2.7 million on top of the additional cost. If you looked out 10 years from now, compounded, that's almost an $8 million premium to pay on it. So that's just information to consider. To bring it up to a comparable standard between option 1 and option 3 would in fact be a more costly long-term solution. So I think that's probably the key consideration. Does option 1 get you everything that you want? If it does, then consider that. If it does not, consider the long-term costs associated with getting it all of the way there. So I think that's, in a nutshell, kind of the key differences between the two. So I'm sure there are some questions or things you might want some more information on. So I'd open it up to you all. Are there things that you'd like to ask?
How do we address what they had to say?
Well, the stormwater, which we heard about, it's a good concern. It's a good question. Things have changed, and in fact, regardless of option 1 or option 3, by current code, we must maintain all stormwater, whether it's falling on the roof of the building or a paved surface. It must be maintained on the property. We are not allowed, by code, to let that water run off. And in fact, when we disturb 1 acre or more of land, whether we're building a parking lot or a building on the site, that requirement kicks in on us. With regards to what do we do with that water? Do we have a pond on the site? Typically, when we build schools, or frankly any kind of building like this, we have what are called dry ponds, dry retention basins, where immediately after a heavy rainfall, there may be some standing water, but it's bioengineered soil to absorb. It's essentially a big sponge. It soaks up into the ground, so all that water stays on site. With regards to the traffic considerations, one of the limitations of this site in general, regardless of where the building sits on the site, is that we have one access point out to the city streets, and that won't change. So we are somewhat limited, well, we are very limited in what we can and can't do with that point. Parking on the site. We have more parking proposed in either one of these schemes than is currently provided on the site. So that should help alleviate any issues that have in the past existed on the city streets. With regards to seeing the building, whether it's option 1 or option 2, particularly in, or option 3, I should say, particularly in option 3, what we have considered at a very again, preliminary level is the ability to screen this building from the neighbors to the north, the neighbors to the east, even the neighbors a bit to the west.
But it would hinder their view of that place, right?
The neighbor's view
If
of the
you
building?
screen it
Correct.
off.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not an uncommon thing for us to do when we look at new or expanded buildings, that we want to, usually through landscaping elements, bring in specimen trees, items that may be evergreen in nature. So even in the winter, when the leaves fall off deciduous trees, we still have a green screen between the buildings and the neighbors. That's not an uncommon thing to do.
Were you considering perimeter fencing, or was that not part of the plan?
We're not to that level of
Would it be
detail.
fenced?
It certainly could be, but it's not, we're not to that level of detail yet.
When, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, when people think about where the building would be, and just in looking at that, it's actually would be set even, the front of the building would be set further back than where this building is now. So it's still,
Yes.
still is quite a bit away from where the road would be. Still wouldn't be like where the soccer
It
field.
would be about equal to where the exit road is right here. That would be where the parking is, so the
Right.
building would be even further back than that.
Right.
Yeah. See that.
And we've recognized that as an important consideration. That's why the building is sited as far back, really, as we can from that street.
When you discuss the traffic pattern and the parking, is it the true proposal as we see on the diagram? And I know we've discussed this in the past, I just don't recall that, for example, the concern raised with parents dropping kids off, that the traffic would actually flow potentially the same way it currently is, all the way down the road and around, versus trying to fill in that top parking lot, which would be a mess.
Yeah, so
Is that-
conceptually, what we have now are 2 separate drop-off loops, one for buses, one for cars.
Okay.
So that manages traffic on the site. But of course, leaving the site to the city streets, we still have the same access point, and we're limited to that.
That top parking lot is very limited. That's not for everyday people, it's not a drop-off point. That's if people are coming in to do business, there'll be some handicap parking there. So it's a rather small lot.
Would the outflow have 2 lanes at least, so a left lane and a right lane?
Well, one of the things we talked about
Facilitate.
was having a right turn lane going out here off of the main drive right here, but then a right turn lane coming in off Forest Hill this way, to number one, speed up the traffic.
So is that something that would have to be approved via the city as well,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So as you can see in the drawings where there's that right turn lane and potentially to the east of the drive as well, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's like an expansion
Right.
of Forest Home for what looks like,
What the whole
100
thing-
yards or so.
Yes, what the whole thing gives us, if you look at on the left-hand drawing there, we have the ability to come all the way in now and make our circles and drop-off points around. Right now, we've got diagonal parking out here, people backing into each other. It's a nightmare. But with either one of those particular drives, we're gonna be sending them deeper into the property, but they won't have the ability to be able to sort of interfere with parking that's out here. That'll be gone.
Considering some of the curveballs that we got at doing the high school renovation, could you speak a little bit, either one of you, to the question that came up about presenting this to the planning commission and what type of curveballs could we be looking at there?
Well, it's like everything, the first part, we're early in the process. The survey was to gauge sentiment. The second part of it was to present some preliminary designs, take a look at what we'd want to do, options and so on and so forth. Then from here, the ball gets rolling further, where we meet with the plan commission, we iron things out, we talk about like the right turn lanes, those kinds of things. And that's where we get going.
Community engagement meetings?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Those would be in probably September, October, closest to the point if we had a referendum.
So why is there only one access point?
That's all the city, we've
They
been
won't allow
informed,
us
that's all
to.
they will allow us to do.
So that part has been brought up, and that was the answer.
Well, it's been brought up in the past, probably every year, I would guess, and they said that's not gonna happen. And to be real honest with you, I don't know that we want it to happen. I think that we have better control over the traffic by doing it this way than we do by even considering another exit, because now where are we gonna funnel those out? It'd be an infringement on property like Matt's over there. It really would take away from the continuity of bringing people into a site, and that's what we want, is one way in and one way out. It also helps with security, to some point.
Well, that's where at least 2 exit lanes would help,
Yeah.
Right.
definitely.
Would there be an opportunity to widen the street,
To what?
to widen it?
Forest Hill? Probably not.
Okay. No, this as well?
This would be a little bit wider.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, we would anticipate that this would almost be rebuilt, this whole drive.
The school drive, but not the Forest Hill. There's no chance of widening that street.
If at all, it would be if they were to allow us to put a right turn lane in, which would only be a short distance, maybe here to the back wall, something like
okay.
that. But it wouldn't widen anything.
Okay.
It wouldn't appear as though in those plans, at least, that there's any anticipation of putting a sidewalk in the front, 'cause that's all fields, right?
No, and we wouldn't want one either.
Right. More maintenance, no, exactly, okay. Just a question came up, wanted to ask.
But most of the cities' new buildings, they're requiring sidewalks. So that's just something they're requiring, so.
Would that be just in front of the property that they would require it?
Well,
Yeah,
that'd
So
be
there would be a
interesting,
sidewalk to nowhere?
because we have it in front of the high school, but we would have a sidewalk right here. On the high school on Drexel, we don't have a sidewalk. So, and that's our property as well. So I don't know how they would do that.
but it's, maybe they wouldn't here, but it's just something that they've been doing. There's sidewalks to nowhere.
Yeah, that's an unknown that we don't know right now.
I mean, I appreciate the info on the parking, and frankly, I appreciate you raising it. You have a unique perspective, so I appreciate that. I kind of want to go back to what we were discussing before, and Linda, your email that you had sent is very helpful. Thanks for forwarding it, Steve. And specifically, the comparison between option 1 and option 3 in terms of renovated space, untouched space, and new square feet, square footage for the building. And I want to touch on one thing, and Steve, I'd appreciate your input here. Because option 1, although it would provide the space for 6th grade, it would provide updated facilities, including the gym and cafeteria and some collaborative learning space. We are not touching, of the 176,000 proposed square feet, 176,000, yeah, proposed square feet. We're not touching 78,000 of that. So,
Correct.
90-some thousand will be touched and 78,000 will not be touched. The space that we're not touching is obviously going to remain the hexagonal shape, trapezoidal shaped classrooms, which is an issue. But have we truly kind of discussed what issue is that going to present 10 years down the road? You know, I'm thinking back to the high school and some of the continual renovations that have been made every 8 to 10 years, where if we spent $26 million to update the school to get it to a point where we could bring 6th grade up, is that truly going to cost us more in the long run when we're faced with having to do an $8 million renovation 8 years from now, 10 years from now, with some other issue that might pop up with the oddly shaped classrooms? And, you know, and when we talk, and I think the other person that spoke tonight, looking at a cost-benefit analysis is exactly what I hope every one of us has done, which I think we have in some of the meetings. But truly, option one gets us to where we want to go, but is it truly going to cost us more 20 years down the road? Where a new building may cost us more today, but is truly going to save us money 20 to 30 years down the road for the life of the building, what is projected, until any necessary updates would need to be made. So I guess, Steve, to phrase that question to you, or pose you that comment, you know, truly, have we looked at what our impact would be 10, 12, 15 years down the road?
Well, we know we're going to, at least the indicators say that we're going to experience continued growth. So that's sort of a given. And this is going to sound a little bit sort of proponent of one or the other, but bringing the current plan, number one, does not give us everything we want. One of the biggest issues with that building is the classroom space that currently exists. So though we would add space on, we're adding a gymnasium, a cafeteria, and some big sort of common space. We are not doing much touching at all of existing classroom space. Therein is where our problems lie, in terms of size, in terms of the ability to run certain programs, the continuity of the building, be able to be in those areas.
So if we look at the new square footage of 65,000 new square footage added onto the building, how much of that is the gymnasium and cafeteria?
It's probably half of that space is the gymnasium and cafeteria.
Okay.
The remainder of it is essentially the additional capacity to bring 6th grade up.
So in terms of remodeled space, it's close to 60,000 square feet of remodeled space if you take out the gymnasium and cafeteria.
It's not even. The remodeled square feet is really only 32,000 square feet of existing building.
Right, but I was adding in the other, if you split new square footage in half, you have 30,000
Oh.
65. So you were really touching like 60,000 other than the gym and the cafeteria.
Yes, yes, correct.
I would also, you know, it's important to say that though we were not touching those other buildings, from a capacity standpoint, it gives us the ability to put the 6th grade in there from a capacity standpoint, but that's all it does.
I have a question. I know you're thinking about saving money over the long haul, but I wanted you to address really, if we have the opportunity to build a green building, what would the operational potential be for some immediate savings for what we're currently experiencing at the existing building?
Immediate operational savings?
Yes.
It's safe at this point to assume that you would see some savings. I would not want to estimate, give you a number, try to quantify what that would be at this point without a building design. We haven't talked about what those systems would be, how far we might want to go with green savings. So at this point, any quantification would be purely speculation. But it is a safe assumption that you would see some operational savings in a new building versus a renovated building.
And there are different levels of green buildings, correct?
Correct.
Could you highlight some, the ranges that you are considering, and
Well-
maybe comment on the percent savings that other entities have seen in meeting those standards?
It's really not something that you can, because every building is unique. regarding the levels of green, if you were to achieve or pursue LEED. LEED is the best-known rating standard. Honestly, and what we've seen through our new buildings, whether they've consciously pursued LEED certification or not, industry standards have moved almost to what's called LEED Silver. That's a mid-level sustainable metric. That's really where almost code has gotten us to. So by doing nothing out of the ordinary from a new building, we would see a measurable savings in operations based over buildings built 10 to 20 years ago. If we decided we wanted to pursue something more significant, say LEED Gold or LEED Platinum, which is not common in our region in particular, you would see some additional savings, but it tends, in our experience, when we've done LEED buildings, the higher you go, numerically, monetarily, the savings start to fall off. You don't see bigger gains by getting more LEED points and higher green rating systems. You do it for other reasons than cost savings.
We intentionally stayed away from LEED certification in the high school project because the cost to go, to the next point a little bit, the cost to go into that level did not justify it in any way compared to the systems and the materials and so on that we put in, the kinds of windows, those kinds of things. So LEED certification is very misleading. It does not give you this high-impact energy savings building. It gives you a building that you can point to and say, well, we've got this new computer on the wall. Jim and I were talking about today that you can run and look at, well, here's how much energy I'm saving today. That doesn't mean anything unless it's translated into, you know, how do you compare it to one year to the next? And what did you do to get that sort of, you know, energy saving? Did you have to spend $100,000 to save 10? And that's what most school districts, and I won't speak on behalf of the architectural firm, but most school districts are not even getting into that. But they are getting into saying we have to do and buy and purchase and plan and so on every feasible opportunity we have for energy reduction, whether that's the kind of water system you have or the windows, or like the windows in the high school. Those are special windows so we don't get a lot of sun coming through them for the heating, but they also maintain the cooling that's inside and it doesn't draw outside. So those kinds of things. So.
And that's an important point, that even if you're in the LEED system, a major component of that is, in fact, the operation and how you use the building. It has nothing to do, some pieces have nothing to do with the building, how it's constructed. And that's why it's very difficult, especially at this very, very preliminary stage of design, to quantify what the changes will be. Because we're going to be adding things into this building that don't exist in the current middle school. Those have implications on the operations of the facility. Yes, the systems will be more efficient. Yes, the building envelope will be tighter than anything that we have at the existing building. But things will change. You're going to have a new building with new functions going on. You could have more intense use of this building because of the investment in the facilities, which would potentially even drive a greater utilization of that structure, potentially greater energy consumption over a longer period of time. Not because the building's less efficient, but because it's getting more utilization.
Can you speak to, Nick, if we went into, if we took option one and added the components on and renovated so on and so forth, what would we see there in terms of, you know, energy or those kinds of savings, other than we have additional square footage to heat and cool and so on and so forth? We still don't have LEED types of building components.
No, absolutely not. You would, in an expanded scenario, in option one, it's probably safe to say you would see an increase in operating costs on that building. Even though we would be replacing systems in the building, we are not completely replacing the full envelope on that structure. In fact, we're increasing the volume of space in that building. So if you were to map it backwards in sort of a post-mortem study of a project, hypothetically in the future, on a per square foot basis, you would probably be down. It's likely that your operating costs would go down, but you're adding more square feet to that building. So the overall cost, the line item on your budget, is going to go up for that building. So, I mean, that's kind of regardless of LEED or not LEED. LEED for existing buildings, if we were to pursue that on that building, would and I am a LEED accredited professional, so I have done this before, you would be pursuing LEED on that structure because there's a lesson to be learned and there's a statement to be made to the community, not because pursuing LEED would save you financially in the long run on that structure. So it would be a different set of considerations if that were to be pursued for option 1.
Well, to your first point, that you would have, on a new building, you would have 100% control of all variables. So you
Yes.
would have 100% control of how you would design it
Yes.
to maximize the
Yes.
potential for
Yes.
energy savings,
Yes.
which only comes with an opportunity with new building, not with existing building. And of
Absolutely.
course, you know, when we look at the cost differential, it's a lot more.
Mhm.
That's why I keep pressing you on, you know, what is the opportunity there that
Mhm.
we're buying into when we take the opportunity to build the most efficient building?
Mhm.
And
You know-
you're, you know, 1%, 10%, 15%, you have experience.
Experience shows it varies so widely that
A
to guess.
range?
We can't do that, Linda. That's putting a number out there that everybody's going to grasp onto,
Right.
and
A
that's not
range?
fair.
It's more efficient than renovating.
Okay, more
Does
efficient
that help?
building.
It's a positive. The square footage in the two proposals, we've been kind of all around the board with a different number of options. As it stands right now with 1 and 3, if you will, finished product about the same square footage? I forget.
Pretty close. So the total square footage is about 170, a little over 176 for option 1. Option 3 is about 180.
Okay.
So we're close. And so you're going to ask, maybe the next question is, why the difference? Option
Why
1.
the difference?
Because we just said option 1 doesn't give you all these flexible spaces, but option 3 does. And we talked about this in the past. Let's call it unique geometry of the existing structure, when we renovate it, leads to less efficient spaces. You know, there are so many nooks and crannies and angles in that building to expand that structure to accommodate additional students leads to a less efficient space program than we can achieve with a brand new building. Again, controlling all the variables, we control the structural grid, we control what the spans are, we control where walls want to go, how wide open spaces can be, we control all those variables. And consequently, we can manipulate space and assign space efficiently, where in a renovation scenario, renovation expansion scenario, we can do the best we can, but we still have to work within the parameters of the existing building. We can't feasibly pull down all the structure, and otherwise we're rebuilding the building anyway. So we're still working within a framework, and that drives a lot of the decisions that will have to be made in that structure. That's why the numbers are close. That's almost coincidence that they're close in total size.
I mean, to peel back the layers a little bit,
Yeah.
what we're looking at here ultimately isn't, should we renovate or should we build new? How we got here is 6th grade up to the middle school. Why? Crowding at the elementary school and alignment with curriculum. Okay, that's the driving factor, not because kids are standing in line at a cafeteria for lunch. Okay, so being that as it is, now we have to look at, okay, where are our dollars better spent? That's kind of what the discussion for tonight was, and I'm hearing a lot of, even if we renovate the school, option 1, which would accomplish our goals, is that really going to be money is that going to be less money in the long run between now and 20 years from now? Now, no one can know for sure, but, so I just kind of want to encapsulate that a little bit. I don't want, as people watch the video and read articles and whatnot, to drift off the point. The point is, 6th grade come up to the middle school to alleviate the pressure at the elementary school, to align ourselves with curriculum. How can we best spend that money? How can we be the better stewards of that money for the community dollars? That's my summary.
Clear, we're going to be spending more money. Is there anything, this might be a question for Jim, though, you know, why, are we in a position that makes it more affordable? Are there, you know, why now makes the best sense? Could you comment on that? I mean, looking at our budget that we'll be looking at later, you know, kind of planning that we may have done in the past, what would make this, the fact that we can spend more because we can afford to spend more at this time. Because we could solve the same things you mentioned with the other option. It does address the more immediate concerns of bringing up, but why would we choose to spend more? Can we afford it?
Well, we've been getting ready for this for a long time by defeasing debt to make room in our debt schedule for whatever the plan might be once we arrived here. So we've put ourselves financially in a good position to be able to do this. You know, with the proposed budget that we don't have an increase in taxes. So I think it's a good time for it, which matches up well with the need that we have in the district for all of the things that Mr. Nielsen mentioned.
And I guess personally, I think interest rates would be very favorable. This is really a time, I look at this as really an investment as opposed to just spending money. I think this is definitely a future investment, and the market looks good.
Right. And I think if we look at costs in the future, we were talking about that earlier.
Right.
That we looked about at the average cost of inflation for building, but it's really even higher in the next year due to the amount of projects going on in the area. There's a large amount of projects going on that the cost factor might even be as high as 8 or 10% more if we wait a year to do this. And then that's just wasted money.
If let's say in 10 years, it might have been 10 to 15 years, we get the need for an elementary school in the southwest corner. And we don't do anything right now to the middle school. Let's say or we just go with option one. How would that alleviate our problems? I mean, we're going to have to do something else, correct?
It's not going to alleviate our problems, it's going to increase our problems, because
Yeah.
number one, we would put money into the middle school for renovation.
Yeah.
We would also have to build a new elementary school.
Yeah.
So now we just increased operational costs and both ends, somewhat in the renovation, but more importantly, we have another building and more staffing and so on and so forth. So that's that dynamic you don't know.
Yeah.
But the capacity on the newer building was scheduled to be 1,450? What that number was?
In the middle school?
Yeah, for a new one.
1,200.
1,200, okay. You know, so to get to that number in 10 years or so, those would be two factors. Then you'd have to take a look at, okay, from now to 10 years out, to Jim's point and to Nick's point, what's that inflationary factor that's going to be going on to build the elementary school, if we need one, as well as having to do a second phase of renovating the current middle school. So, you know, and if it's 3%, you know, it's over 10 years, that's...
Assuming, just for argument's sake, assuming you renovated to look like option 2 that was discarded, it's an $8 million premium on top of the difference in today's dollars. So the option 2, just say 10 years from now you finish the renovation, call it finish the renovation to look like option 2. That was a $49 million project. You're now up to about a $57 million project for the same thing.
So that you know where we're at in terms of conversation and so on. The intent was to bring you this information that Nick has presented and to answer any questions, and we're certainly not done with that, I understand that. But then the intent was for us to have you give us a direction of which option you preferred to go with, and if at all. And then the other option, or then the other question would be, and these are separate issues, would be a resolution to go with three options really, option 1, option 3, or nothing. So that's the direction we need as we leave here tonight, because there are timelines involved statutorily and so on that we need to meet. if it's any consolation, and I know these decisions are hard, and you have people on both sides, and we respect opinions of everybody, the one thing that's nice about a referendum is all it really does is it puts it out to the people. You tell us what you think you're willing to support in terms of our schools. And they may say no, and they may say yes. We don't know that. And so we are at a point through the survey where it warranted us going forward. I think it's our responsibility to take these kinds of facility issues forward, because the last thing we want to do is have board members 10 years from now, if any of you are not board members, questioning you in the grocery store and say, why didn't you do that, take care of that 10 years ago? And so we don't want to be in those positions, because when it comes to kids and so on, and programs and so on, you know, we're not like the factory model where we can produce less, and we're actually asked to produce more every year in terms of what's expected of our kids and what kind of programs we have to offer. And I realize that doesn't sell with some people. I understand it, and obviously I'm pro-education, so I see the other side. But I think we respect the opinions of everybody. There's been, you know, I've gotten a lot of comments, and I know many of you have, and I know there have been some in media circles. But I think there's where it comes down to, as a board, those difficult decisions hinge on a lot of things, and they're important, but they're necessary, and you know, they're hard to make sometimes, but in the end, you got to be able to take a look back and say, was it in the best interest of our school district for whatever reason? And then you can feel good about it, no matter what you said.
Well, to me, this is not a difficult decision. We've answered the questions of the neighbors who have come forward and said, we have this problem, what are you going to do? Are you going to make it worse? And we heard that we're going to take care of the water issue. And that, my basement's flooded 5 times. I understand water issues, so that struck a chord with me too. Linda made the comment, this is not an expense, this is an investment. And that's what we're doing, and we're investing in our children, the future leaders of the community. Who knows how far they'll go. And I think we have to do what's best for the kids. And for me, that's option 3. I said it the last time that if we try to renovate that thing, we're not going to be happy with it. The size of the rooms aren't right, and it's, say it again, it's making a silk purse out of a sow's ear. It's not, no one's going to be happy in the long term. I think we need to go with 3.
Are you looking for a motion on item 11, is it 11B?
11A.
11, oh, okay.
I don't know, are we ready for that yet? Are we still discussing?
And what is, I guess I have a question on what.
Make a motion and then discuss.
Yeah, you could.
This just authorizes it puts the numbers out there. It doesn't say, well, what purpose? A referendum, is this what we're required to vote on?
Are you talking about, well, that's the next step.
Yeah, that's B.
Yeah, we're not
We're
there.
not, we're not on B.
We're not there.
We're just.
Do you want to pull it?
What action item are you looking for on A?
Well,
Well,
if you got a motion, you got to entertain that first.
Right, do you have a motion?
Well, I was ready, I was just gonna move ahead to B.
oh, yeah, we're not there yet.
Right.
Yeah.
That was my question, is
Yeah,
that
Yeah,
what you were
we're-
looking
I was
for?
going to go there too.
We have
Okay.
to wait, yeah.
So, the motion that you're looking for A is to make a decision between 1 and 3?
First, we would make a decision.
Okay, then I would move that we, my motion is that we present option number 3 to the citizens, or we authorize the administration to go forward with option number 3 of the middle school project.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Larson and a second by it was Mr. Alexandrovich?
Yes.
To present option 3 at, well, we want to put that forward as a referendum.
Authorize the administration.
Select option 3 as the course of action.
Yes.
It still sounds like we moved to B.
Three different motions.
You and I.
We're good.
Oh, let's make it a clear.
All right, my motion is that we move forward with option 3,
To build a new middle school.
to build a new middle school. Yes.
Is that still okay with you, Mr. Alexandrovich?
Oh, yes.
Okay, is there any Now we can go ahead with further discussion if we have it. Is there any discussion? I just want to point out for the members of the audience that the comment about the 21% response rate for the survey, that actually was a good response rate.
It's actually an extremely high response
Especially
rate.
compared to, was that 2010 was our last survey? I think you had 17% response.
And even that was high. A normal acceptable response rate is about 7 to 10 is pretty good. So when you get up into the higher digits. It doesn't sound like much in the rational when you look at 100%, but it is a high, according to statistically, it is.
And plus our decision last meeting to go ahead with a referendum wasn't just based on the survey, but that it was a good response. And I'm sorry you didn't get a survey.
No, I completely understand. I was trying to be, accept as much responsibility as I possibly can. Never claim to be an expert on surveys.
Oh, I know that.
It's just, I did watch the whole thing, and I saw that 10% of the people who responded aren't even residents. And I understand, and I saw the explanation there, so I was just trying to be rational and figure out, boy, this doesn't seem like it's a really representative example of what the community thinks, so. It may be disparaging, just the questions that are there.
Is there any discussion?
This is kind of a good time to read this letter that I received, because I received a couple emails and one written letter. One of the emails detailed, "Dear Mr. Lewis, do not spend any more tax dollars," and that was paraphrased. But the second letter was a written letter to me, and it says, "Dear Mr. Lewis, with the upcoming discussion focusing on the middle school referendum, you're faced with the continual struggle of contemplating spending tax dollars versus the benefit gained of improved facilities in our students' education. For a large portion of the city, voters will have no children attending Forest Park in the coming years. I, for one, have never had children in the district, and this funding question puzzles me. Why would we ever choose to not support local public education? There are more than numerous benefits this provides to the city and the district's students. It is my opinion that option 3, a completely new facility, makes the most sense and provides the best return on our investment. I hope you will continue to put children first while maintaining adequate facilities for years to come." And that was a handwritten letter, and I had to have someone translate it for me because there were some things that I couldn't read. But I think this is representative of what I've heard from numerous neighbors, myself, and some members within the public eye. And, I would agree 100% with Linda's comment of looking at cost benefit and what's truly an investment for our district. I'd love to say that we could get exactly what we want and not have to deal with the issue 10 to 15 years from now with option 1. But frankly, I think from history and from what we've seen with our own buildings, that's just not the case. And we're going to end up spending more in the long run simply updating the building as is. And whatever issues might come about with trapezoidal classrooms 10 years from now, I think is something we don't want to have to deal with. I know the line item, the dollars for option number 3 are still less than option number 2. And I think option number 2 would have met our need of maintaining the building where it was, maintaining everything, but it was at a cost of what was it, $43 million? $49 million, which is absurd to think we're gonna get the same building and pay close to $50 million. So I truly see the benefit of a new building, and I see the investment and benefit of that building 20, 30 years from now. The same benefit we'll receive from what we've done with the high school. And I think if we're faced with the question of option 1 and option 3 gives us the biggest bang for our buck, and I would support option 3.
We have a hard decision to make as a board, representing the community, but we represent the students also. And we're putting this out to a vote. The community can say yes or no. we have to think about the long term. If we choose the wrong option, there might not be another chance to come back, and I think option 3 is the right decision.
Janet, you brought up a good point, and I'll just echo it. The wrong option or no option, and doing nothing, and they're faced with a potential elementary school issue and having the same middle school with the issues that are presented, I think is another reason that an update needs to be done, yes. And the extent of that update, I think, with the options presented to us, and what we have discussed tonight, I would agree that we're putting the students first.
One thing to bear in mind, our vote does not put a new middle school out there.
Right.
That's right.
All that does is move it to the next level to allow the community to give us input on whether it's going to be supported or not. So
One other thought I had.
this vote here isn't really as difficult for me personally as it is for Alan.
I think it might be difficult for the community, though, to know that we would be demolishing an existing building. That's always been a sticking point, I think, with people. Why are you demolishing a building? So, I mean, the age of the building it's how old? It really is at its current state would, we have gotten our value out of it. Who can make some statements to that?
I think there's a lot of people that would volunteer to demolish it.
See, but you got to have the citizens that are going to, they see that, and it's a hurdle to get, that will have to be dealt with. So have we gotten our value from that building? Is it time to take it down?
Well, the high school is older, but it's a totally different type of building.
I think the
Right.
construction might,
It-
you could probably speak to the quality of the construction of that building versus the high school.
Well, in the pod layout, I've heard nothing good about it.
Well, it depends on how the pods are laid out. We've got some buildings that technically people refer to as pods, but they're designed differently. Here we've got pods, and we've got green space, and we've got a bathroom in the middle, and you walk down a hall, and you get 4 of those rooms are actually not square, they're octagonal or a variety of other geometric figures. So it's, for example, if you go over to Robinwood, which was alluded to, all those classrooms are regulation, they might have a little bit of a curve to it, nowhere near what we have over at that building. So, and you walk down a hallway and you have classrooms around you. You don't have that over there. You walk down a hallway, you've got a bathroom, and maybe you have a classroom on the other side. That's not configured squarely. And the same thing with all the ones that are all the way around it.
And I don't know if this is valuable in your consideration or not. When we look at trying to answer that question, has a building outlived its useful life? There are, like everything, there are lots of variables that go into answering that question. Things like mechanical systems, finishes in buildings, structure. When you look at the building as it is today, yes, there's quite a bit of maintenance, systems that have worn out. As purely a building, just putting aside the educational function of it for a minute, purely as a building, is it at the end of its life? Parts of it are getting close. I mean, structure is certainly not falling down. Mechanical systems are there, and there's significant investment that has to be made in that building. But because this is an educational facility, I think that's the piece that should be considered tipping that scale towards replacement. The way educational spaces are organized today in modern buildings, the way educational delivery is happening today and into the future demands more flexibility. And because that programming element has changed, in my opinion, that makes this building obsolete. And because of the physical constraints that it presents and the challenges, costly challenges, to making that constraint go away, my personal feeling is that makes this building really obsolete at the end of its useful life.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, could we have a roll call vote, please? Mr. Alexandrovich?
Yes. Mrs. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Ghosh?
Aye.
Mrs. Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen?
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Aye.
And I say yes.
Motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
The second part of this, which would be 11B, refers to official legal language that references the resolution. And with that, Jim, I'll have you speak to it if you would, please.
Okay. Given the vote that you've just taken, you would want to look about halfway down the titles of the resolutions there after the word "or," where it starts with initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $43,300,000. You would just need to make a motion to have the board adopt the resolution and just state the title. And then we need a separate motion on the referendum, authorizing the referendum.
I guess I have a question. So if we approve the resolution authorizing the bonds, well, we don't even know if the public has approved this. So why would we be authorizing bonds when we don't have the results of the referendum?
You have to approve that to get them to vote on whether you can go ahead with it or not. That's just the way it works. I understand your point. You don't get to borrow that because you made that resolution or approved that resolution, but you approved it so that it can go to the community to have them decide whether you can do it or not.
That's state statute, right? That
Right.
code 67, code 60, chapter 67.
Is this the whole
So
resolution?
it's not pending, there's no language in here pending, or is there?
No, the first part
It
of
doesn't
it,
say pending the successful.
This is all directly from the attorneys.
Okay, and this is not the question that would be on.
this isn't the question that would be on
Okay,
there,
this
no.
is just the board giving approval to seek, or giving you a resolution
Approving a resolution to
authorizing.
move forward with borrowing.
Right, there's two pieces to that. The first one is the borrowing, approving borrowing that amount if given the go-ahead. And the second piece of it is a separate resolution right after the 43.3 million that says resolution providing for a referendum election. So the two things you're voting on are to set up the okay for the borrowing and then approving to send it to referendum.
Okay, I'll make a
Those are two
motion
separate
then
votes.
to create an initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $43.3 million.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Lewis and a second by Mrs. Larson. Is there any discussion?
I have a question, just as a what if. Let's say you get the approval from the board to seek this funding, and then you find out that something goes crazy with interest rates, or you're not happy with however this would go about. Would you then, is it possible that we might not move forward from that if you get a snafu in the funding? You're authorizing you to get the funding, but let's say we can't get the funding.
Right.
Let's say we were in a district in very good standing for whatever reason.
Yeah, you're authorizing the funding contingent upon the community saying that it's okay to do that. So your vote tonight doesn't mean that we're going to go look for that money or borrow or anything. We have to wait until after the community vote. If they approve it, then we have the ability to go out and borrow that funding. And if interest rates are at 100% at that point, then you might want to rethink it, sure. But this really just tells the community what you'd like to do or what you think is the best for the kids in Franklin, and then says, and we're going to give you an opportunity to vote on that.
So you really won't seek any of this moving forward until after
Right.
the referendum vote?
Right.
It's a formality is all it really is at this point.
Okay. I just didn't know if you were kind of getting our ducks in a row, waiting for the, okay.
It was like the high school where they went out for bids, the bids came back, and then we had to prove that we'd accept that bid. So that doesn't mean we're gonna borrow it. Like Jim says, if the interest rates come through, I'm not gonna go to 100, but if it comes
Oh,
through
I
at
know we're not gonna
10%,
borrow it.
we,
I knew that.
we might not want to move ahead with that, but I don't know what the options are at that point.
Don't you have to publish this, though, in like 11 days or something, somewhere?
Yes.
All
Yeah.
of this, yes.
Yeah.
So I guess it says that you can get the money Well, why doesn't it say contingent upon a referendum? Why
It
wouldn't it
doesn't,
say that?
it says it in the statute, in the chapter 67. It says it in there, and it,
It can't be straightforward, put in here.
We're following the law.
Doesn't have to
the
make
law
sense.
is.
Kind of making the law here.
No, we're not.
So you're saying, though, we authorize this, we get the vote in, if it's yes, you're off and running. We don't, this never comes back, the 43.3.
Well,
The results come back.
the results come back to allow us to do this, but you have to remember, then there's a specific question that gets placed on the referendum ballot. This is a resolution. The question is a little bit different. And basically what it says, to Jim's point, here's what we want to do, here's what it's going to cost us. Now we can't do anything else. We couldn't say in a resolution or in the referendum that we want to borrow $43 million to build a middle school and then say, you know what, we got the money, let's go build an elementary school instead. You can't do that. It's got to be dedicated specifically to whatever's in the resolution.
So the more important part isn't the money, but the purpose of the money.
Well, the money too, because you can't exceed it.
Could you spend less?
You could.
You could.
That's what you should be doing in just about every building project if you can. But there's a reason why there's that number there. That number has been calculated by the experts to say, here's what it's going to cost you.
Okay.
any other discussion? Hearing none, can we have roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mrs. Ghosh.
Aye.
Mrs. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen.
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Larson.
Aye.
And I say yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. And then the next is the resolution, and the resolution is what the question will be, correct, Mr. Milzer?
The next piece is the resolution providing for a referendum election. So this is the piece where we say we need to have a referendum on this.
And just to clarify then, for the election, these pieces in here are what will be on the ballot question.
We will bring forward to you what the exact question, how it'll be stated.
Oh, right here.
So then I'll make a motion to create a resolution providing for a referendum election on the question of the approval of an initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $43,300,000.
And I second that.
Motion by Mr. Lewis, second by Mrs. Larson. Is there any discussion?
And where do I see that? Was there?
That's down in the,
See, I didn't see that either.
It's separated by a
There's an
semicolon.
attachment. There's an attachment in board doc. I did not see that till just now. So this is the question that would be on the ballot? This is
No.
how- No. This, okay, we're not there yet. Good.
Correct.
Oh, that is
If you're
it.
in discussion, I can read to you what the
Yeah.
question will
I've
be
got
here.
two things here. Oh, for the
yeah,
law. Got
because
it.
last time, that's going to come
Subject to
back to us
change.
again.
Yeah,
Well, this
Well,
one
because
is-
last time we
we made changes.
made
'Cause it was
changes, so
very-
this might be the
it
time
was
to
not
do it if we want
worded
it.
very well at all last time.
While you're in discussion, here is what the question will read. There's a little preliminary, this is the notice of election that'll appear in the ballot, and what it states is, notice is hereby given that an election to be held in the Franklin Public School District on Tuesday, November 8th, 2016. The following question will be submitted to a vote of the people. Shall the Franklin Public School District, Milwaukee County, Wisconsin, be authorized to issue pursuant to Chapter 67 of the Wisconsin statutes, general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $43,300,000 for the public purpose of paying the cost of constructing a new middle school on district land, tearing down Forest Park Middle School, site improvements, and acquisition of equipment, furnishing, and fixtures.
Yes.
That's exactly the way it'll read on the ballot.
That's basically what,
Yeah, that's actually more straightforward than what it was for the high school. Yeah, I'm okay with this.
I did.
so is
Was there a motion on this?
Yes. Motion by Mr. Lewis, second by Mrs. Larson. Any other discussion? Mrs. Witkowski, Mrs. Ghosh, any discussion? No. Hearing none, then can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Ghosh.
Aye.
Ms. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen.
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
And I say yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. All right, then, we're moving on to item 11C, the business services report on the budget. And I believe this is an action item, possible action item.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we had the budget presentation in June.
Thank you.
And I did receive some questions, and we answered all of those. So the point we're at now, remember, this is our first draft budget for the year. The one thing we know about it is that it's going to change before we get to the end of October, but it lays out our plan to get us started for the year. And so we would just need an approval of the budget. It was in the budget packet starting on page 11. It's the budget summary as a document.
And that's required as of today. Like, we have to do that today.
You wouldn't have to do it today, but we used to do it in June. Our year started July 1, so I'd like to get it in place going forward, even though we know it will change.
And none of the assumptions have changed since we've last discussed.
No.
Before we do that, do we have any questions for Mr. Milzer from the questions that were submitted, or any new questions?
The state aid that you projected was around 400, I don't know if I can get this right. Was it the 400,000, but it ended up coming in at closer to $1 million? Or what?
That's what the state is saying right now. They would think, based on, from last year to this year, it'd be about $1 million more. And that would be higher than what we have in there for our assumptions.
So that's still their estimate number? That isn't the number?
No, we won't
You
get
don't
the
get that
number
till-
until October 15th.
After the third Friday.
Right.
But the only variable is the student count.
No. Values of all properties in the state is still a variable in there, so
Isn't it based on prior year valuations?
may happen.
It's not based on prior year?
We haven't got the final yet, no.
Let's just say, for argument's sake, the numbers stay where they are, and it comes in, and we're 500,000 ahead of where we thought we would be. Would it be reasonable to assume then that the levy could go down by that amount, and we actually, instead of being at a zero, we could actually be at a lowering of the levy because we're getting more from the state?
What we would look at doing is adjusting the defeasance to make it
What
larger.
we could do is look at the defeasance, you're saying, right? I mean, we don't have to, though.
It's not a law, but especially based on what we've just agreed to do, you would want to do that because you're now taking your basis for what are my taxes, and you're lowering it. So now the cost of your building is going up. How much is it going to change for next year? It's going to change by more because you lowered my taxes this year. So by that, and as well as the funding plan for the building is based on having the defeasance in there, you'd want to increase the defeasance, especially this time. Wouldn't have to, not by law, but you'd want to. That would be the smart thing to do.
Because otherwise,
We'd pay for it the following year.
otherwise next year, the difference would be bigger than what otherwise would be, and then we would get less,
Right,
and then we'd have to make up that difference
Right.
from the levy.
right. And if the referendum would go through and we would take on debt, the first payments would be then, your defeasance would drop out, and that spot would be taken up by new debt. That's one of the ways we keep that tax fluctuation down.
We won't know that, though, when we take our final vote in,
October.
oh, actually, it is in October. And the annual meeting is when we finalize it in October.
Finalize the
Final
levy.
is in October, the levy.
Finalize the levy, right.
In November, is it
November is
is it October or November we're going to do the budget?
November 8th?
It's got to be done by November 1st, so it's in October.
October.
I get it, okay.
So Jim, you're looking for a motion to
Yes.
approve the budget summary?
Right.
The 2016-2017 budget summary?
Yes.
I would make that motion.
Motion by Mrs. Larson to approve the 2016-17 budget summary.
Correct.
Do we have a second?
Second.
second by Mr. Nielsen. Any discussion? Hearing none, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen?
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mrs. Ghosh?
Aye.
And I say yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thanks for your response on the questions, Jim.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Milzer. Item 11D, the treasurer's report, could be found in the board docs library. Item 12 is the board meeting debriefing. Do we have any comments? I have one comment. I meant to acknowledge at the beginning of the meeting that Mrs. Julie Preman this is her first meeting with us, so welcome. So, sorry for not acknowledging you. So,
I'll comment that we had some good, thoughtful discussion tonight.
I would second that. I appreciate my board colleagues, the way we kept our students in mind. That was our goal 2 years ago when we wrote that goal about the middle school, that we wanted to improve programming for our students. That was always our goal, and we kept that goal in mind. So I applaud all of you for doing that. I appreciate that.
any other comments?
I would just say one thing, the blue document that I handed out to you, it's informational only, but it's about what, sort of what you can and cannot do as a public official regarding the referendum. And there's some things in there that are worth reading as far as you can't promote it, I can't do certain things, and so on and so forth. So it's just informational only, but it's a decent read that might be worthwhile for you.
Will we also, well, this is board meeting debriefing, but will that also be enforced, the policies within the school? Regarding,
Well, our employees can do whatever they want, other than during school hours.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
okay.
are we going to mention that to them? Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, they can't campaign in the classroom and that kind of thing.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you. Future agenda items?
So will we be hearing about a timeline or what events or things you're considering? Or is the only work left to
The next,
Present that.
what we'll be doing next is setting up informational meetings for the public, and that'll be in September, October, and early November, in that range. We'll have those at the middle school and provide all the information we can about what we're doing and why we're doing it and so on.
Might I suggest that we just have that as a continual agenda item?
That we have,
Some sort of update on the middle school as an agenda item every meeting?
okay. There won't be anything for August or, so,
Yeah,
just so you know.
right. No, it's-
Sure. Actually, it'll be in my year-end update, so.
Okay.
because you'll be creating materials, I'm assuming.
Pardon me?
You'll be creating materials that are.
Yes.
That we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I know how some of them feel from our tour over there, but to have access to those rooms for the
Oh.
public, actual access in those rooms.
We
is
plan to do it
important.
just like we did last time, because if you remember, last time we went to referendum, middle school was part of that. And while Chris was there, we opened up that building to anybody, anytime, to come and take a tour. And we'll still do that. We'll make it very open and,
Yeah, I might agree with Janet. I think we might need either some organized open door time.
Even,
we did that last
Board
time, and I think
members,
we got
I
one
would-
person
I would
one time.
volunteer.
And yeah, it'll, the last model worked very well. I think we'll continue with that.
We can get 2 in by October 15th. I think that would show that we're doing what we can to get the message out.
and then for future agenda items for our meeting on the night of the annual meeting, I don't know what you have planned for that meeting. I mean, I hate to just waste a meeting, have it over in 7 minutes, which.
No, yeah, we try to get some just pretty substantial items, but few of them. We've got one resolution we have to approve for an organization we belong to. Other than that, we'll do an update, a little bit, but that'll probably be more incorporated into the annual meeting for my year in review type of thing.
Do you want to do policy review?
I'd like to, at that time, we just completed our administrative retreat, and I'd like for maybe Nick and Chris, and, well, all of us were there, so maybe bring up to speed on what direction we're going and what we're doing and some of the things like that. I think report for you here, and that'll take a little bit of time.
Because we can't start early, so we might as
Right.
well fill up our half hour, so.
Do we still have some kind of professional development event on our calendar?
Have what?
We have a retreat September 21st.
Oh, September 21st.
Still, I believe it's, yeah, September 21st. So, okay. And then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Nielsen, second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Larson. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:46.